Kenya or Tanzania, which one should you choose for your safari? If you've spent any time researching this, you've probably found articles that answer that question. They're confident, they pick a side. Kenya for this reason, Tanzania for that reason. And you might have read discussions on travel forums where helpful strangers chip in with wisdom aimed to push you in one direction or the other. And they are, almost without exception, completely wrong. They're not wrong about the facts. They're wrong about the question. Because Kenya versus Tanzania is not the right question to ask. And the reason nobody tells you that is either because they don't know, or because perhaps they have a reason that they want you to pick one or the other. I'm Andy Higgs, the Campfire Connoisseur, and I've been exploring Africa for well over 30 years. Kenya and Tanzania are among the countries that I know best. In this episode, I'll give you the honest answer to the question you're actually asking. I've been planning safaris in Kenya and Tanzania for a long time. I know both countries well, although I'll be honest with you, my personal knowledge of Kenya is deeper. Not because Tanzania is less interesting, absolutely not, but because I've spent more time in Kenya. This means I have longer term relationships with the camps, the guides, the people on the ground there than I do in Tanzania. Basically, I've visited more of the country personally. For Tanzania, more of that knowledge comes from the relationships that I built up over a very long period of time than it does from personal experience. In practice, the depth is similar. However, the source is different. I think you should know that, and I think any specialist who says that they know both countries equally is probably overstating the case a little. I'm going to cover three things today. Why the Kenya versus Tanzania comparison is almost always the wrong starting point. What actually determines the quality of your experience in either country, and what genuinely determines what is right for you. A few years ago, I was travelling in Kenya and I had some extra days to myself after a trade show, and as is my wont, I wanted to fill up those days with some exploration, see some areas of Kenya I'd never been to before, get the lowdown so I can tell you and everyone else all about it. And I had chosen to travel to Lamu. I've heard a lot about it. It's this very traditional old town on the coast. It's just somewhere I've always wanted to go. I think Lamu is what I imagined Stone Town in Zanzibar to be like, but without the apparent throngs of tourists that I'd heard so much about. I'm on the plane from Nairobi with Jambo Jet over to Lamu, and I noticed that there was an interesting mix of people on the plane. So we had a bunch of locals, obviously, but there was also like a bunch of, I saw one, then I saw two, and then I saw like 5 or 6 of these, how can I put it, yoga mums is what I would say. Like, so basically white female travellers of a certain age, yoga mat under one arm, designer bag under the other, on their way to Lamu. And I thought that's a bit odd, but okay. So I was actually reading while I was on the plane. I did some more reading about the area, and I realised that okay, there are 2 very different versions of Lamu. So clearly we are going in different directions, and that indeed was the case. I didn't see them again after I landed because they were whisked away to their resorts and retreats, and for a week of yoga. I was heading to the old town with a battered duffel bag, my very old camera, and absolutely no idea of what to expect, which in fact turned out to be the perfect combination, as it often does. Lamu Old Town is basically, there are no vehicles. I believe there's one vehicle. That was the thing I read in the guidebook, which also was a little bit old, but I never saw any vehicles when I was there because the streets are not wide enough. They're alleyways, basically. But I think the governor of Lamu has the only car on the whole island. Otherwise, it's donkeys and carts, some mopeds. I think that's about it. So, yeah, very, very different environment to anywhere else in Kenya, actually. I was staying at Lamu House Hotel. Very, very comfortable, right on the waterfront. So I woke up to the sound of the muezzin, watched the fishermen going out for their morning catch, and it's just an incredible atmosphere. I absolutely loved it. Most visitors see Lamu Old Town as a half-day excursion from their swanky resort, or potentially a break from their yoga retreat, but staying there is something else entirely. Same flight, same destination, 2 very different experiences. Kenya, and indeed Africa, works like that. And knowing which version you're going to get depends entirely on the decisions you make before you book. Why the comparison content is wrong. Anyone coming down firmly on one side, Kenya or Tanzania, is clearly has a vested interest or is writing for clicks. That could be an operator, a lodge owner, or indeed a blogger writing under a sponsorship agreement. Here's something that you should know as well. Forums are even more insidious. It looks like you're getting advice from people who are there to, offer their wisdom to help you out. Unfortunately, a large number of people that are on forums actively answering questions are actually doing it to try to build up some kind of authority. This is something that is taught in a lot of courses about digital marketing, about how to expand your reach. Go on these forums. When someone asks a question you can answer, go in there, act like the expert. They'll love you, and maybe they'll go through to your profile and find out that you actually offer trips to Africa, or you own a lodge, or you do whatever. So if something feels a bit off when you read those answers, it probably is. It's unfortunate, but that's just how it's become. It's seen as a very easy way to try to build so-called influence in the travel sphere. And then you've got travel blogs, which I'm not, they're not inherently biased necessarily. And there's often a lot of good information in there. Unfortunately, it's now become so difficult to read. You've got like maybe a 1,000 word article, which takes you like longer than it probably took the person to write it to read, because you're getting pop-ups, you're getting slide-ins, you're getting offers, you're getting, I would say travel blogs are second only to recipe sites for difficulty in reading an article just from start to finish without being absolutely distracted and frustrated by all the pop-ups, cookie consent, adverts, whatever. And anyone that's guaranteeing you're going to see the big five or a specific animal in one country or the other, or anywhere, anytime in Africa, is just proving their ignorance. And that's someone you should just take this as a sign to avoid what they're saying. Because the whole point of nature, the whole point of a safari is you don't know what you're going to see. If you want guaranteed sightings and good photo ops, you know what? Go to a wildlife park, go to a zoo in your home country. You're going to save a lot of money and you will get to see the animals. But is that what you want? No, it's not, is it? And that's when someone says, Kenya, you're guaranteed to see the big five. Tanzania, you'll definitely see a leopard in the Serengeti. Don't believe it. Don't build any trip around ticking boxes. Just go with it. You will experience things you never had on your list, okay? And they will be great experiences. This might be a little bit controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. This problem can occur anywhere in Africa, but it does occur more in Tanzania and also in Uganda because of the model of the safari. The standard, what they call Northern Circuit Tanzanian safari, would include Serengeti and Ngorongoro Crater. Those are the two main goals. However, it's padded out into maybe a week. You come into Kilimanjaro airport and you then either stay the night in Arusha or you go straight to Lake Manyara is normally where you would stop. You would have lunch there. Maybe you would overnight in that area there. And then the next day you go into the Ngorongoro Crater. And then after that you go into the Serengeti. It's good value. It's still not cheap, but you get to do a lot in a short period of time. And it's logistically straightforward. But then think about this. What if that guide who's driving you the whole time, what if he lives in Arusha? So he meets you at the airport, that's great, and then you drive off on your safari. But how can he guide you in the Serengeti or Ngorongoro Crater or even Lake Manyara, as well as someone who's actually was there the night before, has been there the whole time, lives there in that area, lives in the camp? No one can be an expert at every area. You can be a very, very good guide. And believe me, there are great guides in Tanzania that will drive you as well. A resident camp guide was there the night before you arrived. He can tell you what happened. He can tell you what they heard during the night, what they've been looking at recently. Let's contrast that with how I normally organise safaris in Kenya. You come to Nairobi and then you fly into the Mara. You can also drive, or you can also drive to other areas or fly to other areas. But the point is, you're going into that area and you're being met and taken care of by guides who live there. They are there the whole time. And they have open vehicles and they drive you around and they show you what they know. And they will also want to talk, you can talk about their local area, how it is to live there. All this kind of intimate knowledge they have from living there. Then maybe you switch camps. You move to another camp and the same thing happens. You are transferred between the camps to the next place. And then the staff of that camp take over. I mean, this is the way to do it, right? You can also do this in Tanzania. It's not that difficult. You do the same idea that someone drives you in, and when you get to the camp, you use the resident camp guides. And this is the way I put together the majority of the trips I organise in Tanzania. You're using the camp vehicles which are open, because in Tanzania, if you're driving from Arusha to the Serengeti, you're driving on the main road. You can't drive in an open vehicle. You wouldn't want to drive in an open vehicle along the road. And this is why, in my opinion, the classic Northern Safari circuit with driver guide from Arusha is never going to be as good as it could be if you were using resident guides. Now, it's still going to be a good trip. There's no doubt about that. But why wouldn't you just want to get the absolute best trip when you're all coming all this way, right? The solution applies to both countries equally. This is the important point, right? I picked Tanzania there as the example of what doesn't work, and I picked Kenya as the example of what does work. But I did make it clear, and I want to make it clearer, that both these countries have camps where they have their own guides, their own vehicles. You just have to get there, okay? And that's what you need to look at. Now, that is what makes Tanzania more expensive than Kenya, because the Serengeti is much bigger than the Masai Mara, even though it is, like I say, it's the same ecosystem. The section that's in Tanzania is bigger, and the distances are further. It's not as open in terms of the aviation market in a way. In Kenya, you've got a lot of competition, and you've got a lot of airstrips and a lot of companies. Tanzania, there's not so many, so the costs are higher. The logistics are more complicated. That's how it is. That's worth knowing. It's also worth paying for, believe me, but it will cost you more. And again, like I talked about in previous episodes, these areas are vast. There is space there, but there is also concentration of camps in certain areas. You just need to have consult with someone who has the expertise to tell you this area you're going to be away from those crowded. Space exists, you just need expertise to find it. A properly arranged safari in Tanzania is just as good as one in Kenya, absolutely. So the question is not about picking the right country, it's about planning correctly and taking account of the different variables in each country. When it comes to safari and beach combinations, both Kenya and Tanzania have amazing options where you can combine the bush and the beach, right? Now, a lot of people will have heard of Zanzibar, and they ask about, I want to go to Zanzibar. I totally understand that you want to go to Zanzibar. It's a fantastic destination. However, this is the important thing. Why do you want to go to Zanzibar? This is what a lot of people don't ask or don't even consider either. Is it because you want to go to Stone Town? You want to experience that ancient town like I was talking about in Lamu, with the alleyways and the going back in time, the sort of Tales of the Arabian Nights kind of experience? Is that what you're looking for, or is it the beaches? For most people, it's the beaches. They've heard of Zanzibar and they connect that with white sands, empty beaches, paradise. You have to work quite hard to find empty beaches in Zanzibar, but you can find great beaches in Zanzibar and lovely places to stay, as you can in other areas of Tanzania on the coast, as you can on the Kenyan coast, you know. So it's an image attached to a name, basically. I have to say, Zanzibar doesn't consistently deliver that. You have to know where to look. It's a bit harder work because it is a very developed island. There are other options in Tanzania. There are other options outside of the main busy areas of Zanzibar. It's got a long coast, and there are areas that are very little visited that are spectacular. And then you've got the whole of the Kenyan coast as well. And you've got Lamu. If people are interested in the Stone Town experience, you can also go to Lamu in Kenya and get the same kind of experience, but with a tiny fraction of the number of tourists there. It's up to you. Why do you want to go to X? That is actually one of the most important questions in safari planning that is often overlooked. Most agents, they are just glad to hear that you want to go somewhere. But when you really know that someone has looking out for your interest is when that agent or operator asks you why. Why do you want to go to Kenya? Why do you want to go to the Masai Mara? Why do you want to go to the Serengeti? Why do you want to go to Zanzibar? That's when you know you're getting somewhere, is if you get asked those questions. Safari planning isn't just about asking questions, it's also about answering them from the travel designer, if they're doing their job properly. I can give you another example of how specialist knowledge and expertise really makes a difference if you do If you are going to Tanzania, doing this northern circuit, going from Arusha into Ngorongoro, Serengeti and so forth, there is a place called Gibbs Farm, which is somewhere you could overnight on the way from Arusha. And instead of just passing through as quickly as possible to get to Ngorongoro, which is what most people do, stay 2 nights at Gibbs Farm. It was when I was there, I remember it had been voted I think the second best hotel in the whole of Africa or something. It's an incredible place. It's a working farm. It's just gorgeous. Most people just drive straight past it without any idea that it's there. And this is the same instinct that sends people into a crowded national reserve and not into a private conservancy, which is, 10 minutes away. So what actually determines the right choice, Kenya versus Tanzania? There are a few factors that might make a difference to your particular situation. One is budget. Tanzania generally does cost more if you do it properly. Internal flights cost more, the distances are longer, the logistics are a little bit more complicated. Factor this in before you compare quotes. The time of year will have a bearing on the cost and also the experience. The migration, I would say, is broadly predictable, but I would never want to guarantee somebody that they're going to see the migration, they're going to witness certain aspects of the migration. This comes back to that box ticking idea. The same with rainfall. You can say this is the dry season, this is the rainy season, there's short rains here, long rains here. Nobody knows anymore. It's very unpredictable. And I've actually experienced it myself several times in East Africa, where I've been in one area and it's been sunny and dry, and then we've transferred to another safari camp, which was only 70 kilometers away, and the climate was totally different. And then we contacted people who were still at the camp where we were before. We met with them afterwards, and they'd had rain, and we'd had like sunshine and no rain, no sign of it. And so there's like these microclimates there. So it's unpredictable. Embrace it. It's part of the fun. Who is traveling? Are you traveling alone? Is it couple, a family, a multi-generational family? Are there small children, older children? There are so many factors here that could play into it as to which destination you choose. If you've been on safari before and you want to try something really different, then both countries have some magnificent options outside of the big names. But honestly, what it all comes down to is, what do you want to experience? And then we'll work out whether Kenya or Tanzania or both are the right choice for you. Or maybe somewhere else in Africa. Here's a little challenge from me to you. A kind of grown-up traveller test, if you may. It takes guts to go to southern Tanzania, to go to Ruaha, to go to western Tanzania, to go chimp trekking in the mountains, to go to Laikipia, to go to Savo, to go to these much less well-known areas. It takes guts to do that on your first trip to Africa. But if you've already made the decision to go to Africa, you've got the guts. Use them. The right answer isn't Kenya or Tanzania. It's the trip that's designed around you specifically, your budget, your wish list, your interests, your experience level, the composition of your group, etc. The most important question is, what do you want from Africa? You'll only get what you want when someone asks you the right questions, starting with why you want to go in the first place. In the next episode, that's what I'm going to address. I'm not going to be talking about where to go or when or what it costs, but why. Why do you want to go? I'm also going to talk about how, if you are starting to get the feeling that all your holidays are getting very, very similar, that might actually not just be in your head. There'll be a link in the description once it's live. And if you're actually at the point of planning a trip and want to talk about your situation, I'd ask you to apply rather than get in touch. Not because I'm trying to be selective for the sake of it, but because the few minutes it will take to tell me a bit about yourself and your interests and so on is so useful in forming the conversation that we have later, rather than just starting from scratch. There's a link in the description. No pressure, no pitch, just a conversation.